Devil's Ruin is an exotic energy sidearm that was available during Season 9 by completing the sundial and then doing a short quest. Its intrinsic perk, Close the Gap, gives the weapon a variable trigger. Pressing and releasing the trigger will fire individual shots. Holding the trigger will charge up a high-powered staggering laser which stuns unstoppable champions. The second trait, Pyrogenesis, will refill the magazine when you fully charge the laser. Alright, so there's deceptively a lot to unpack with this weapon. First up, it does not fire like a normal weapon in Destiny. Instead of the shot firing on trigger press, it fires on trigger release like a bow. This is because pressing the trigger starts charging the weapon's laser, similar to how a fusion rifle has to charge up its burst. This has a bit of a learning curve to it since you are expecting the shot to fire the instant you press the trigger and not when you release it. The laser fired from the weapon is a short duration beam, similar to something like 1000 Voices, but without the AoE damage. If you stop charging the beam, you will instead only fire one shot from the magazine. The charged laser will always fire a full magazine's worth of shots due to the Pyrogenesis perk refilling the magazine before firing, assuming that you actually have ammo. That about goes over the basic quirks of using the gun on paper. Now let's get into the practical portion of the review. In PvE, Devil's Ruin is a bit of an oddity. It has some pretty high burst damage with the charged laser and actually has real utility in the in-game content with the ability to stun unstoppable champions. I really enjoy being able to shoot 14 rounds and then on my last shot charge up a laser beam and keep the damage output rolling. Since the laser will always refill the magazine for a max damage burst as long as you have ammo, you have a lot of freedom with choosing how to pick through the packs of enemies. I found myself picking off some of the lower tier enemies or just counting my shots carefully into a beefy mob and then right before I run out of ammo in the magazine charging up a shot and putting it wherever it was needed. The laser beam actually has quite a bit of range to it as well. You can be a bit further back almost at fusion rifle range and still deal some consistent damage with it. It even hits precision shots so you can be rewarded for holding the beam steady on a crit spot. The one thing I really don't like about the weapon is something I believe can be mitigated once you use it a bit. Since it fires when you lift up the trigger instead of a normal on press, it feels like there's a delay to each shot. This is something I was able to just get used to and didn't notice once I put some time into using this mode of the weapon. But it is jarring to swap to this weapon and then suddenly have to remember how to actually fire it in the manner a sidearm normally does. I guess the one other thing I consistently dislike is the overall range of the weapon. When you're in an activity that has some longer range fights, you really need to have some other alternatives ready to swap to. I found myself using breech-load grenade launchers, snipers, or anything else with range, so I'm not pigeonholed into close to mid-range combat. You really start to notice the damage fall off on the semi-auto shots once it starts happening. All in all, I think Devil's Ruin is actually a solid weapon for PvE. Despite its lower range, the versatility of being able to effortlessly swap between pew-pews and voops means you can easily make up for that small deficit. It's absolutely worth using in activities where unstoppable champions need dealing with. Sure, it's not going to be as optimal as some of the other options out there, but at the end of the day, it's still going to get the job done in a really unique and fun way. Now in PvP, this is where I have some difficulties recommending this. The firing on release problem I was talking about in PvE is definitely amplified by a pretty significant degree when battling the unpredictable movement of players. It makes using the pew-pew mode kind of a liability at best. I feel like there isn't a lot of good feedback when actually landing your shots, and combining that with the whole firing on release just makes the whole weapon seem kind of sluggish. So I ended up using that just to finish off people that were already low or just kind of peck some shots into someone. It was very rare for me to pepper someone down in semi-auto and then charge up a shot into someone else since I just found more success in using the charge shot most of the time. Speaking of that laser beam, it does really well. It doesn't have quite the instant death potential that a fusion rifle does, but you can still melt someone before they can generally react if you time it right. Full disclosure, I still, after 6 years, suck at charging a fusion rifle, so the gameplay probably isn't looking too impressive. Getting a feel for the range is kind of tricky. You have to keep the beam on your target for roughly 8 ticks of damage from the beam, which looks like this in real time. This can be quicker if you hit precision shots with the beam, but I definitely just found more success in going for body shots. Since the damage numbers come up so rapidly, it's kind of hard to tell if you're properly tracking someone with the beam, and you just kind of have to hope that you're in the proper range for it to hit, and that you're on point with your aiming. The damage against supers isn't that great from my experience either. I'm sure in the correct circumstances, you'll be able to just nuke someone if you get only precision shots. But in the world of potato aim that I live in, that won't be a regular occurrence. It won't stop me from trying and failing every time I see an active super, though. Is this a competitive gun for PvP? Nah. It's absolutely a fun thing to pull out from time to time, though. Pairing it with a sniper or other long-range option in the kinetic slot can give you a pretty effective loadout if you're okay constantly swapping weapons depending on engagement range. The sad fact of the matter, though, is that you're just going to have more success with an SMG or even a standard sidearm. Why would you charge up and hold a beam on someone when you can just spray them down in less time with an auto rifle or SMG? If you're using this in PvP, you're using it because it has some pretty sweet moments, and those make up for those features that are kind of liabilities in the long run. I do want to take a brief moment before this review ends and note how sweet this weapon looks when it's charging up. The top of the gun opening up and shaking as the charge builds up is just awesome. It really feels like this gun is just on the verge of breaking every time you fire off that laser shot. The feeling of toasting a bunch of enemies with a giant beam from this tiny little gun just makes me giddy every time I accomplish it. And that about does it for the review. If you enjoyed this video, a positive rating and sharing it would be appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.